Hey everyone, Alicia here from Stretch It app, and on today's episode of Stretch It Fundamentals, we cover Camel Pose. Camel Pose is a great opportunity to stretch your hips, psoas specifically, and quadriceps, but also helps you to figure out where your hips are in space and how to utilize your glutes in extending your hips for a more successful camel pose. If you're practicing the hip tilt, but it's tough for you to get low enough for hands to land on your heels or ankles, you can use blocks to lift the floor higher. I recommend that you place the blocks outside your ankles because if you do so inside, you can touch them, but it'll be a very narrow space for your shoulders. And if you're still working on your shoulder flexibility, that will come eventually. But for now, let's try to prop the blocks on their highest outside the ankles. Initiate from the hip. Keep that extension. Reach back. And you can then practice not only pushing your hip forward, but feeling what it's like to reach both arms behind you with the help of your blocks. Camel pose can be challenging if you don't fully access the hip extension here. So ultimately, when pressing the hips forward, we want to fully utilize our hip flexors as well as our quadriceps. And it does bring the age-old question, should you squeeze your glutes and back bends or not? Camel pose is a great way to practice just that. You don't want to just squeeze your glutes and keep your pelvis stationary. You want to be able to contract your glutes, but drive the hip forward, still pulling navel to spine. Just trying that. Let's bring our hands on the hips, and the legs you can start slightly wider than hip width apart. To start narrow limits the accessibility of your hip extension, especially if it's your first time doing camel and practicing. If you need more cushioning for your knees and are happen to be working on a mat, you can fold the edge in or make sure you have a pillow or towel under your knees. I'm purposely starting slightly wider than hip width apart. Bring hands on the hips, contract your glutes, but think hinge back. Pull the navel to spine and feel the stretch here in front of your hips. Bring it back. Breath in to prepare. Exhale, hinge. Let's do 2 more. 1 more. Excellent. When reaching back towards the ankles, again, the further we can push our hips forward, the easier it will be to reach down. Because if you try to reach down here and then push forward, sometimes it's easier to establish your hip extension first and then everything else follows, right? So let's bring hands back on the hips. Take a breath in. Exhale, push. Find your heels, and now continue to press hips forward. Drive your glutes forward, pull the shoulder blades together, and widen the chest. And when returning, carefully pull up as one unit. Or if you don't have the strength yet, one hand, hips down on your heels. If you find it easier to bring hands on the heels first and then push forward, you can do that as well. But I recommend that you practice the actual tilt of your hip so you can create that muscle memory and the strength that your glutes need to bring into this position. Because again, the further you go back, you can't stop pushing forward. Drive the hip forward, feel the stretch, not only in your hip flexors, but in your quadriceps as well. If you would like to improve your flexibility, make sure you check out our classes on our Stretch It app. You can find the link down in our description box. And if you wish to see more videos like these, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel.